So thanks for jumping on with me. This is Dr. Fraser Logan, and we're just going to have a wide-ranging conversation here and see where we end up. So, Fraser, tell me a bit about your background.
First of all, thank you very much for having me on this podcast. It's lovely to meet you and to hear about your social media platform. So my background is philosophy. I used to be a teaching fellow at Warwick University, and I was teaching philosophy and then teaching interdisciplinary modules for students of all disciplines. And then I quit in December, in part because I was getting fed up of marking AI-generated essays. I suppose one of the issues with academia. And instead, I now sit with a typewriter in Jeffson Gardens in Leamington Spa and type poems for strangers. So I run this social media page called Typing for Strangers and have been uploading videos of myself typing poems and recording the interactions.
So you were specializing in philosophy, teaching philosophy, and the interdisciplinary stuff. Tell me a bit more about it. What was your area of specialty and what was your main fix there?
Yeah, so my PhD thesis was on a philosopher, a 19th century German philosopher called Friedrich Nietzsche, and I was looking at his views and practices of honesty. So I was really interested, for personal reasons, in becoming more honest. I wanted to see which practices could I adopt in my own life to be more open, to say what I think, to express myself more clearly, more nakedly around other people. So I was looking at free writing.
Okay.
And I suppose that just means saying what you think at any given moment without editing, without a filter. And that's what led to this typewriting practice, sitting in a park and typing poems on the fly in 3 minutes. So my philosophy background led directly to this Typing for Strangers project.
So do you think your specialism is on honesty there? And there's been a lot of noise, hasn't there, about authenticity online, and people, even politics now, authenticity seems to be the main calling card for a lot of people. And so where do you think that people are claiming authenticity online? But given your background, what do you think the actuality of that is? What do you think is the kind of what is authenticity honesty?
Sure. Yeah, it's a tricky question. So I guess that you could look at it two ways. On the one hand, being your authentic self could be disrobing. So you just throw off all these pretenses, all the masks. You are some raw, natural version of yourself. That could be one type of authenticity. But if you actually try this, you find you end up saying things that you don't necessarily identify with. You're just saying the first thing that comes to mind. Whereas a core part of being human actually is thinking and deliberating and interrogating. So I don't think it's as simple to link authenticity to just nakedness. But I do think there's a part of that. You meet people who have fewer inhibitions, who are very open with you, and you do think they're being genuine or sincere. Maybe you would say authentic. But then you can also meet people who sit with whatever idea you share with them and really interrogate it, and then give a considered response that you would say is their authentic opinion. I don't think I have a clear position, but I think if there is any account of authenticity, it has to accommodate both the spontaneous form of the human condition and this more considered, reflective, calm aspect as well.
Do you think that there's once someone has convinced other people that they are honest, do you think there's more danger in them?
Yes.
Not subsequently being honest is the thing.
I think so. I think if you tell somebody that you're honest, then, or if you hear somebody saying they're honest, then your alarm bells should go off. But I do think it's attractive if somebody is committed to honesty as an ideal. So I don't think we ever become honest. I don't know if it makes sense to really say I am honest, but you can be committed to an ideal, and the ideal is something that sort of stands above you like an inspiration, and you orient yourself to that in your day-to-day life. So you think, well, I want to try to say what I think rather than mask or lie. And that's going to be a standard that I will hold myself to. And I think that's more attractive and more realistic.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I'm fascinated by the idea that you don't know the next thing you're going to think.
Yeah.
And so, you can't, and further than that, you can't recall what your last thought was 5 thoughts ago. And we won't get into the nature of consciousness and stuff like that, because we'll be here. Well, so many people haven't solved it for decades. So I suspect that you and I won't solve that issue today. But there is a question there about, because you can't tell what the next thing you're going to think is, where does that honesty come? And is it almost more honest to not use that raw, does not pass go, do not pass go, do not collect £100 straight out of your mouth into the ears of others? Piece there. And in terms of honesty, where do you think that lies with the influence of other things? So, meme theory, the ideas that the concept that ideas are almost parasitic and passed down through you, social pressures. Where do you think that kind of overlays over this idea of honesty?
Yeah, I think it's probably honest to admit that your opinions are subject to other external forces, including sort of the percolation of different influences through the internet or just through day-to-day interactions. It would be dishonest, I think, to imagine yourself as this island in splendid isolation from all other external forces.
Like no man is an island, as they say.
Right, exactly. So I think the self as well it's not an island, it's a continent connected to many other land masses. And part of being honest, I think, is just embracing that and saying, well, why am I so keen on holding on to this idea of myself as this immaculate self that originates all of my thoughts, all of my opinions, it's in total control? Why do I have that craving at a psychological level? Why am I craving that control? And for me, free writing poems, feels very human, because I think it's human actually to let go of that control, and just it's not about surrendering, but allowing the inspirations to take over. And the ancient Greeks would talk about having muses singing to you. So there are inspirations that are coming to you. You aren't necessarily going out and finding them. So that's one of the attractions for sure.
Because your writing now is basically raw human creativity put down into a page really quickly. I mean, how do you do it? How do you do this thing?
Yeah, I think definitely part of it is practice. If you're seeking coherence or a unity of style, then it takes time. And at the beginning, most of the free writings were just a whole range of different ideas, very messy. Often I would end up offending people. They wouldn't have any unity. The practice is key, but then I think the main thing is your attitude. So you just have to trust yourself. You have to let go, maybe return to being like a child. Children, I think, do this better than us. If you ask a child to paint brushstrokes or to paint on a canvas, they can just go, and they have this natural trust in themselves. Not always, but usually. Whereas we, as adults, I think we expect ourselves to think our way onto the canvas, and that's not the easiest way to get the words or the images out there. You just have to actually unlearn a lot of what we learn as adults, I think, is key.
So it's about discarding some of the inhibitions that you've picked up throughout adult life. Do you think is the key here?
I think that's definitely key. And I tried this. I was at a conference at Queen's University in Belfast just last month, and I brought my typewriter. I have it here. Brought my typewriter to Belfast, and I had participants. Well, I asked if anybody in the conference would like to try free writing live in front of other people. And I'm sure everybody in the room is a better poet and writer than I am. These were very intelligent people, but there were only one or two people who wanted to, or who were sort of confident enough. So I think it has very little to do with talent. I'm definitely not a poet, not a natural poet, and everything to do with letting go and just throwing yourself into something creative, in the name of embracing sort of human creativity, I think.
And yeah, when you're doing this stuff out in the park, do you feel there's a certain type of person that it appeals more to?
Yeah, I usually students are the most interested. I think quite often people want to be on social media is another thing. So they see that I'm recording videos, so they play to the camera a little bit. Then there are other people who are just curious. So they see a typewriter or they hear the typewriter and they don't know what I'm doing, but they come up and say, I'm interested. Can you tell me more? And then I have some people who remember using typewriters when they were at work,
Yeah,
and
okay.
they are more interested in the typewriter actually. So you have a whole range of different people. And then there's some people who they actually don't care too much about poetry, but they love the idea of a human being in a public space writing for other humans. So I was typing in Florence maybe 2 months ago, and people would walk past. They didn't stop for a poem, but they stopped just to say, thank you for doing this. And I think that's something that's particularly acute, given that the whole of our lives are now saturated with AI. Just to see something human, regardless of its quality, is deserving of a compliment.
Yeah. So where have you seen that? I mean, you were lecturing, and there would be impacts from AI from that, and then you're out there now doing it as pretty much as direct from the creative bit of your brain here to other people's awareness as you can. Talk me through that journey of where you've seen the impact from when you were teaching, both in philosophy and in interdisciplinary, and then through to what you're doing now. Where have you seen the biggest impacts of this stuff?
So first of all, you see it in staff, so academics. You see academics relying more and more on AI. And I think this is in part to cope with exorbitant sizes of marking that are required, and just the publish or perish mentality that you have in academia.
So are they using AI to mark the papers?
Yeah, I've seen this countless times.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen this.
That's coffin builders, surely. They're building,
Yeah, it's ludicrous. And you end up with students using AI to generate essays, and then academics using AI to mark the AI generated essays. And then you wonder, why is there a university in the first place? If you could just have AI having a conversation with itself, who is really learning anything?
Yeah.
So I think that's a serious problem, and I've definitely seen it. Obviously, it's only anecdotal, but I would be interested in studies, because we know students do, I think particularly in their final year, I think they're more likely to use, there have been studies on this, in their final year, more likely to use AI, in part because they're trying to get the work over the finish line at the end. Whereas at the beginning, they're often open to ideas and looking to sort of explore themselves and to be creative and curious. So yeah, with staff, that was the first obvious observation. Students as well, although the issue here is it's very difficult to prove anything. So I have sat with students whom I suspect of using AI, but you can't really prove it. How would you prove beyond reasonable doubt that an essay was written by AI? Very difficult to do. There are telltale signs, but AI is getting better and better at hiding those, and students can also ask AI to hide certain obvious AI telltale signs. So you end up having a conversation where you can't really say what you think. That was a frustration. Then the other everyday interaction, fewer and fewer people are writing what I would call human prose. Instead, people who a few years ago couldn't string a couple of sentences together are now Nobel Prize literature standard writers. But well, not really, because their writing is more generic. AI has a sort of generic style of writing. It's very sleek, very polished, and sort of constructed.
Do you feel there's going to be a reduction in meritocracy as a result of that, or do you think the floor will just come up and then the meritocracy will kick in from the new baseline that is established?
Yeah, I'm worried here. Who will be judging the worth of art and creativity? Who is deciding the merit? Because if it's AI, then I think we're relinquishing one of the key things that makes us human, which is the capacity to judge and to have taste. Taste is so fundamentally human. So who would be judging? And what if these people judging quality writing have been raised on AI writing? Then they might see somebody like Cormac McCarthy or Melville and think, well, these writers are, they're very idiosyncratic, the way they're using sentences. It's not all that clear what they mean. And therefore they put them aside and say, we much prefer this more monolithic text where everything is written almost in business English. So that's my worry, is who is deciding. And I hope you have people who, they're not just reading AI, they're reading widely, they're reading human authors.
Yeah, I think there's going to be an increase in value for human created things. And the analogy, purely through scarcity. So the example I always use is the pineapple. So it used to be back in the olden days, people would rent a pineapple for dinner parties because they were rare. And so you got a pineapple go around different dinner parties, and it was a symbol of wealth. And I think that we'll soon get to a point where having a human drawn picture like the one in the background there is a symbol of wealth, because they're scarce, as opposed to this AI derived art. And it's the same for writing, the same for any kind of, right down to as robotics improves and things like that, you'll get it that if you've got a mug that was made by a human, or a hand blown glass from a human, that's more valuable than a machine made, robot made, AI generated thing. And I think it'll be a symbol of status and wealth as they go through.
Yeah, I really hope this is true. I hope this is what we hold on to. I'm worried that people may fail to see the value of human art. So there's the novelty aspect, but it's not just the novelty, right? It's not just that it's a pineapple in a party that nobody else has had. One of the values of a pineapple is that it's nutritious, it's tasty. And there's that as well. That they're not mutually exclusive. And there is something nourishing for the soul when it comes to human art. And I hope we don't lose that as well. When you read these great authors, or when you see a painting by a human being, it does nourish you. And I think it's important that we teach this, and people, they really appreciate it, and then they promote it over generations.
Yeah, I mean, are you, when you were doing the teaching and things like that, were you seeing any, and again, it's anecdotal, but were you seeing a particular type of person or demographic or anything like that using AI more than others?
I think, honestly, I think one of the issues at universities is there is a problem of inequality of opportunity and inequalities, where certain people who maybe have to work part-time in order to subsidize their own university degree or pay for it, have less time. They have less time to go to the library to read. And it's not just time, you need to be in the right mind frame, you need to have the right mindset in order to think creatively. Creativity doesn't really happen when you're under duress. There's also a lot of research on this. We are most creative when we are happiest and relaxed, actually. It's kind of a myth that this tortured artist is going to create great works. So students who are pressured by external factors of having a part-time job I did find they were more likely to use AI. And I also felt more forgiving because they're trying to juggle more factors.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas the students who 100% full-time studying, and that applies for maybe a PhD as well, have a lot of time just to study. They have more time to be with themselves, to go for a walk in the park and allow ideas to come to them, to think creatively and critically. So there's that, and I think that's an issue that goes hand in hand with AI, is who has the freedom and the privilege to not use AI and just rely on their own time, their own talents.
And so you've moved on to now to sharing some of the poetry and things like that you've done on social media. I mean, what's been, so you're, you know, I dislike the word influencer, but you're trying to raise awareness of what you're doing through social media. So what's been your experience of leaning into that, you know, over the last 6 months, really?
Yeah, so it's funny. I never really used social media until maybe December or January. I always had a reluctance to doom scroll or to post things. I had a private Instagram page, and now I have a public page where I'm trying to get as many people to see my work. And it doesn't sit so easily with me. I do feel there's a bit of a tension. But I also think it's probably the most useful and powerful platform to have at your disposal, different forms of social media. And 30 years ago, if you could have thousands of people that you could reach, you would of course say, well, that sounds like a dream come true. I'm going to try that. So I'm finding it tricky to balance or to live with this tension, but I am enjoying the messages that I get. People often send me private messages where it feels more human, like it's a one-to-one conversation, and they say things like, keep going, keep sharing your work. We need this kind of work in the world. We need people who are connecting with human beings, human to human conversation, and conversation with strangers as well. So it demystifies the idea of the stranger as this scary person. Most strangers are very friendly, and you can have great conversations with them. So it feels meaningful when I have these responses. So that is why I keep doing it. That's what's reassuring about it.
I mean, it's quite, social media now is it's quite remarkable in that it's everywhere. I think it's something like 5 billion people are on social media, which is nearly the entire population of the Earth.
Yeah.
And you've got 71% of images being uploaded every day to social media are AI generated.
Really?
71%. Over in November 24, so a long time ago now, 18 months ago, over 50% of posts over 100 words on LinkedIn were AI generated.
Okay.
So now over 50% of text on all social media is AI generated. There's been 2 studies out. One says that 51% of internet activity as a whole is non-human. Another one says 62%. So out of the 2 studies, majority of activity online, not just social media, but online, non-human. So we've actually reached a point of no return, both online and on social media, where it's mostly now non-human. Of that 51 to 62% of internet activity, 90% of that is malicious bots. Which are either data scraping or posting out messages, or they're classed as malicious. So you very nearly reached a point where the majority of the internet activity is malicious activity.
Yeah.
And at what point are we so now, like you said about the student with the teacher and the student, one's writing with AI, one's working with AI. At this point, with the majority of the internet being non-human activity, it's just AIs talking to AIs. And over the course of the conversation that we've had now, thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, who knows, maybe more, of new AI agents have been spun up and started doing activity online. And between the 2 of us now, we have not created any more humans in the course of our conversation. So
Well,
it's a losing battle. That's it's I think it's gone too far. The horse has bolted.
yeah,
And so one of the things that we did with Ruverse is we wanted to create islands of purely human activity online. Now, what's interesting is that we are not, we're not the deciders of the quality of that content. So if someone wants to post pictures of their new trainers or what they have for breakfast, is that contributing to the wellness of humanity overall and progressing us? Possibly, but probably not. But nevertheless, it is a human. It is a human that's doing it. And so, you said you're on Instagram. So when you think 71% of the images being uploaded to it every day, which means that it's, as a percentage of the platform, it's going up all the time. And that was reported by Forbes late last year. So the percentages, there hasn't been a new updated study, but it's going to be significantly high. So how do you feel like that fits in? Going back to what we were talking about earlier about honesty.
Yeah.
Because how can we, and everyone values authenticity, yet is accepting of consuming this stuff. Because I think that social media needs to change its name.
Sure. Yeah.
90% of users don't post more than once a month.
Yeah.
It should be called entertainment media or short form entertainment media. Most people are just going on there and not posting.
Yeah.
So how do you see this? I've just hit you with these statistics that are really quite shocking. How do you see that tying up with what you were saying earlier about honesty and authenticity?
Yeah, these are shocking statistics. I had no idea they were that bad, but it makes me now rethink my followers and how many of them are actual human beings.
Most platforms, some platforms are up to 45% bots.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So for me, I'm using social media because it opens doors, and I think I've already found that. So it can lead to somebody hiring me, can lead to a real person seeing my work. And next week I'll be typing at the Leamington Peace Festival, and it's a real human-run event where we sit in the park, and I'll be typing for real people coming up to me in the park. So it's always a means to an end for me. And I think, especially in light of your statistics that you've just shared with me, I think it's even more important to remember that social media is not, or this form of social media is not the end in itself, and that I shouldn't get hung up on the interactions and follower counts and numbers, especially if 71% of the users or a significant majority are malicious bots. Then I want to use that only as a stepping stone to get to real human being interactions where I know that I'm talking to a human being. I think that's one of the takeaways for me.
Yeah. There's a phrase I like that's used in business, which is never let it become a metric become a target. So don't allow the number of users or the number of messages become the target, but in fact the target should be the actual end output from it.
That's exactly it.
Measurement, but it's not the target.
Yeah, I'll remember that. These are shocking statistics.
Yeah,
shocking.
It's that the average 18-year-old now will, based on current use trends, will spend 25 years of their life scrolling.
So what are we living for? Really, what are we living for?
Great question. And that's one of the things that we've been trying to work very hard, and I've been trying to talk to people who are much cleverer than me, which isn't terribly hard, but much cleverer than me, in terms of how can we create a space that is allowing people to talk to people first and foremost, and encouraging them to post, but not at the cost of living their lives. And I had a call the other day with Jessica Butcher, and she does Scroll Aware, and she said that people will die with more of other people's memories that they've seen online than their own. When you think about that.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to work with different organizations to implement things that are going to try and prevent that and try and take out some of the addictive features of social media in that process. I mean, one of the things we do is that the feed you have, the main feed that you have, is chronological and just people you follow. It's really quite remarkable. But
Yeah.
But AI isn't it all evil? What you know? What in your experience do you think are some of the pros of AI? What's the
Yeah, so obviously it's so popular for a reason, and it's not just that it's being promoted by Silicon Valley and these types. It is effective. It's highly effective. You can get a lot more done. You can use large language models as personal assistants. I suppose in some way, there's less and less of a distinction now between a typical Google search and using an LLM, because often AI results are embedded into your Google search results. So it is effective for just retrieving information, and then there's also distinction, or not a distinction, but the generation of information and the retrieval of information are getting increasingly blurred, because we used to type in a question into Google and then you would get a response that was on a human website, but now AI will generate content in response to the websites it's scraped. So all of this, it's ubiquitous, it's kind of working in the background, it's very effective, it's hard to escape. I suppose a positive would be that it is a leveler, so it does level the playing field for people who maybe don't have certain quality of opportunity. Let's say they don't speak English, so you use an AI chatbot to translate something for you. All of a sudden, your English is as good as anybody else's. That is a leveler, but then the consequence, the cost of leveling is that you aren't really doing the work yourself. It's leveled for a reason. You haven't had to climb up the ladder. You haven't had to work hard at learning English, or if it's being creative, you hadn't put in the time to learn what you need to learn in order to be creative. It's incredibly addictive and useful, but I think that just makes it harder and harder to resist. And then you really need to have principles. You need to have a principle that, no, I will choose the inefficient path. I will choose the slow, hard, grueling trek towards being a better writer, being a better artist. I do have this immediate response at my fingertips. I could have my text written for me right now, but I'm going to choose not to choose to find my own voice. That is, I think, very hard to resist, but if we make a compelling case for why it's important to develop human skills, creative thought, critical thinking, then I think people have more, they find it easier to justify not using AI.
Yeah, and it's a balancing act, is it? Because absolutely, AI needs to cure cancer. Hands down. Yeah. It needs to solve cleaner. It needs to solve nuclear fusion so that we have unlimited clean energy. I do think some of the direction of studies is concerning. A study out of MIT suggested that 80% of people would change their mind about something if an LLM told them something contradictory to what they'd already thought was the case. Concerns there about impact of different people, and the use of disinformation via these things, particularly when you have the LLMs are being trained on the internet, now have the tools to propagate a large amount of information on the internet, which the LLM subsequently trained on, which then subsequently convinces 80% of people that the knock-on effect there is quite stark. I mean, what are your hopes for the future? What are your hopes for the future for yourself, and for AI and your creativity? Just tell me about what you'd hope to see for yourself and humanity as a whole.
Well,
Makes-
I hope we return to human connection. I hope we remember what is valuable about being human. I think fundamentally that's what I'm interested in. People don't relinquish things like creativity that are so central to the human experience and have been for millennia. And also to appreciate that the value of art and being creative is not really the outcome that has value, of course, but it's the process, the journey, what you learn along the way, the skills that you develop. All of that is vital and really meaningful. If you don't have any of that, then I don't see a point in living. So I hope for the future we remember that and hold on to it and fight for it as well, because I don't think it's something that you can just take for granted. I think you do have to take risks, creative risks. You have to put your work out there, and it's embarrassing at first. But if you don't try and you just relinquish the best of humanity to the robots, then really what is the point? I don't see a point in that kind of existence. So that would be my hope, is that we hold on to the human and embrace it, errors and all. Also, I'm not sure if we can change everything. So you talk about 71%, and that number will increase in terms of AI content online. And it might be at some point 99.9% of content online is AI generated. But there's still that 0.1%. And I think that's worth fighting for. And even if it's an island and you're pushing back the hordes of AI content, it's still an island that is human. So I think it's worth being there.
Yeah, great. Yeah, yeah. We have to create these little spaces. And the analogy I've been using is that AI is here; it's here to stay. In the same way that cities are here and are here to stay. And some things about cities are great, but everyone likes to go for a walk in the countryside every now and again. And the reason we made Rooverse is so that people can go for a walk in the countryside, and that countryside is just purely human content. So Fraser, it's been great having you on. I mean, where can people find you apart from on Rooverse? Where can people find you on social media and stuff like that?
All of my handles are the same. They're just at Typing for Strangers. So I will have a Rooverse at Typing for Strangers handle as well, where you can find me. And also in person, usually Jeffson Gardens in Leamington Spa, on a park bench with my typewriter. So do come and say hello. And yes, thank you so much for having me, Ross. This has been a delight.